It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Musical Lyrical Lingo. We're your hosts, Tim
and LJ. Today and every week we will be discussing musicals, but specifically what they taught us. But not today. So back at the beginning of season 2, we set each other a challenge, a lovely musical challenge of diving into unfamiliar scores. But little did we know that along this adventure, it would lead to an extraordinary connection with a musical that we both have fallen in love with and that has resonated deeply, especially with me. Today, we are thrilled to welcome the incredibly talented Nico Juber, who is the wonderful mind behind this musical, Millennials Are Killing Musicals. And we're going to ask her that key question. Are millennials really killing musicals? So, hey, Nico, thank you so much.
Welcome, Nico.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here. I'm blushing from the praise. Thank you.
We're honored to have you on the podcast. Where are you joining us from today?
I am in not sunny Los Angeles, California.
Oh, I suppose it can't be sunny every day, can it?
It can't. I love this. So I am, my dad is British. So I go to the UK a lot. I love like dreary weather. So I'm very weird in that way. So this is perfect for me. I'm in my element and thriving.
You feel at home. Well, definitely come to Northern Ireland because we are constantly wet and grey outside. So.
That's perfect. I love it.
We have to work hard to not be miserable.
Yeah. That's why we love musicals. So you were recently named Woman to Watch by Broadway Women Fund. Is that right?
I was, yeah.
How amazing does that feel to read your name on that list?
It was incredible. It was a total surprise. I got an email about it when it happened last year, and I didn't know any of the people involved. I had no idea who nominated me. And so that was, sometimes you push and you push and you push, and then other times the universe is just kind of doing things that suddenly appear. Like, how did this happen? But it felt really good to have somebody notice the things that I was working on. And it made a really big difference for me just in terms of how seriously I was taken. And the timing couldn't have been better because I think it was like around the time of the off-Broadway run of Millennials.
Yeah. That's so exciting.
So exciting.
And you also are winner of, you wrote another musical called Winner, is that right?
Yes.
So you are winner of a rigged high school election, but no, you wrote a musical.
Yes.
Yes. So it was Millennials Are Killing Musicals that we first heard of you. So as I said in the intro, we set each other a challenge. So Timothy had given me a list of 5 musicals and your musical was on that. And as soon as I hit play, I was like, I love this. I understand it. I get it. And much to Timothy's annoyance, I constantly go on about how we are millennials and we are awesome, and we are great and millennials rule the world. And
yes.
As a mom, I just felt like it spoke to me so much. So I just want to say thank you before we really get into anything. I just thank you so much for making a musical that really spoke to loads of different parts of me.
See, I was sneaky, Nico, when we set each other this challenge. I love listening to new musicals. I get a bit bored sometimes of hearing the same. The same soundtracks over and over again. So I make it my mission to go out of my way and try and find like new material. And I came across your musical, and as soon as I heard it, it was unbelievable because there's a lot out there that's pretty woeful. And then I heard yours and I went, oh my God, there's hope for the future of musical theatre.
Oh my God.
Lauren is mental with being a millennial, and like that's all she ever rattled on about. And I was like, I am putting this in my list of 5 musicals. I know for a fact she is going to pick it, and then we can talk about it on our podcast. And that's exactly what happened. So thank you for writing such a brilliant musical.
Oh my gosh.
Exciting. And
guys. Thank you. And mom to mom too. I appreciate that. I mean, I didn't really know what I was doing when I started writing 6 years ago, and I just kind of started like dumping truths out, and it evolved into this whole thing. I mean, it's been a huge journey, but yeah, I wanted to, I ultimately, as a writer, I want to have things that people connect to and find their way into, even if they're not moms or women. I think that's something I'm really proud of with this show, is that while it is through the lens of motherhood and really all the main characters are moms, you can find your way in through social media. You can find your way in through the millennial condition, like all of those things. And I also identify, I mean, I am like poster child for millennial at this point, because it's like my brand. I have to talk about it. But I am the elder millennial variety. I'm on the older end, so I've been living it for a long time.
Oh no, it's great. It really was. And I think there was so much heart and humor to the musical. And is that something that you wanted to do whenever you first started writing it? Did you want to have a clear balance, or because you were drawing on real life, it just kind of turned out that way?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I also just want to comment on, I love the sneaky, I'm going to put it in the list. And like, I know she's so you know her so well. I am the worst because I don't write things with a plan. I just start writing. It is like, if you read any of the books, and I've read them since then, like once I started and was like, oh, I'm taking this seriously, I went and read, the Stephen Schwartz book and all the Stephen Sondheim books and like all of them. And I was just like, oh, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't have an I want song or this or that. So I really was just writing heart and humor at the beginning. But I would say if I look across everything that I've written, and now I have a small, body of work of a short musical that I wrote that won a challenge for NAMPT back in 2020. And winner, it's all like, well, the short musical is not a comedy, but it has comedy in it. But I would say like comedy with heart is kind of the thing that I just end up writing. And I think part of that is just who I am as a writer, and part of that is the worlds that I want to live in. And when you are working on a show for 6+ years and 10, I mean, you hear about these stories of like 10, 13-year developments. I want to live in fun, joyful worlds that are like life affirming and exciting, and people can have a good time with. And so much respect to people that write really heavy material. That's just mentally, I can't live with those characters in my head all the time. So
yeah. So are musicals, like, putting what you do as your career, are musicals a very important part to your life? Like, do you enjoy musicals? Like, do you go and see musicals? Is it a big thing for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I now identify fully as a musical writer. I mean, this is what I do this is my full-time job, which is like a wild thing to say. Writing, producing, and I do some like dramaturgical stuff for other writers. And I did work in marketing for a long time. And so I will sometimes take like side gigs for marketing type things or branding or strategy. But I'm like full musical theater now, which is such a wild thing to say. But I see shows all the time. I try to see as much as I can here in Los Angeles. And we actually have a great scene that's growing and growing, which, I'm excited to explore and be a part of even more. And then in New York, I go to New York probably 3-4+ times a year just for like meetings, or if I have something happening, like a presentation or a song at 54 Below, just so that I can go take meetings and, and also see shows, because so much of I need to see things. Like with my own work, I have to see it, I have to hear it. I don't imagine it in my head at all. Like I need to literally have actors do that. And the same thing with other shows. Like I need to go see musicals and like, oh, that's a great idea. What a great, having the narrator on the side of the stage or, whatever it is, it gives you just general ideas about like how to stage things or, well, I'm not staging, so I'm not the director, but like how things can be made theatrical. And I've also had stuff in London and worked in London. And so I try to see shows out there too. But it's wild. These are business trips. Like, it's just like a wild thing for me. Like, this is my job. I say, my kids are like, you're seeing another show. I'm like, it's my job. I got to go see shows. But yeah, and I grew up also with parents who have written musicals and write musicals. So, they wrote, there's a Gilligan's Island musical that my parents wrote that gets done it's available for licensing, Broadway licensing, and it gets done all over the place. And they have a Brady Bunch musical that's been in development for a long time.
Wow.
My whole childhood, I remember like development of a musical. So this was like kind of normal that this is a thing you did. But I didn't realize that it was something that I could do until I had my millennial existential crisis in my 30s and kids and was like, what am I doing? And, was trying to do the corporate thing and was just kind of, all of this was pent up in me. So
that's amazing.
What do you enjoy most about musicals then? When you go to see shows, what are you looking for? What do you enjoy most from them?
That's a great question. I feel like being happy and coming out uplifted, I love, but I would say like the thing that makes musical theater so special, and like this is true about all theater, but I think with musicals, because they're so complicated. First of all, I love when I'm not dissecting a show while I'm watching it. Like if I am just sucked into it and like in the world of it and we're all experiencing this together. And it's like when all the elements work, where it's like lighting and because I know how complicated it is now, like when it's all just working, it is magic. I feel like we can all agree, like nothing else that exists. So that's probably my favorite thing. And that you do that and it's never the same and things can go wrong and like set pieces don't work. Like that's what we love. Like anything can happen in theater. So, yeah, and like happy, fun shows that I feel like, at the end, like, wow, theater is amazing. Like, this is all worth it. So
stay with us. We'll be right back.
Love the catchy tunes and insightful discussions on musical lyrical lingo? Why would you not? Now you can reap your fandom. Ooh, we've got fans. And show off your love of all things musical theatre with our exclusive merchandise. Ooh.
From comfy tees,
t-shirts,
mugs to stylish tote bags, we have something for every fan. Our designs are inspired by the show's iconic themes.
Because we are so iconic.
And featured playful quotes, alpha, and graphics that will have you humming along.
I will never work again.
Wherever you go.
So head over to our merch store now and start shopping. Spend your money, people. And don't forget to share your pics on our social media using #podcast musical lyrical lingo merch. We love to see our fans rocking our gear.
Yes, we do. Happy shopping. Yeah, I agree with you. I like stuff that I can go away going, oh, yeah, it had a bit of a message, but I also feel good for it. Like anything that's really too deep, I struggle with a little bit just because it scares me.
I just love the escapism you can get from those couple of hours in the theatre. It's really exciting. So did you dabble with, writing, like the writing process as you were growing up? And then when you had your crisis, as you call it, did you then go, right, I know what I'm doing? Like, how did that journey into writing musicals come about for you?
Yeah, it's never linear. So I've always been a songwriter. I would say a pop songwriter. And then I've always been a writer, mostly comedy. When I was in high school, I was in, musicals and like, the school musical. It was a Pick a Little, Talk a Little Lady and like The Music Man and all of that. I think I had written some like little plays and stuff and I directed one. Like I was always interested in it. And then my senior project in high school, I recorded an album, and it was all like original songs. And when I went to college, I would play shows, like me and a guitar, around. I went to school in Boston. So like coffee shops, and that's how a lot of people sort of knew me. And I was still writing. I was writing like sitcom spec scripts, like, you know, I have like an office that I wrote, like, just, you know, it's a fake, if you don't know, it's like a fake episode that you're trying to kind of pitch and practice writing. But I never put it together. Like, it didn't occur to me to put it together. And when I was 19 and in college, so I was, I think, junior, or it was the end of my sophomore year. Oh my God, I don't know how I don't remember this. I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, so cancer, when I was 19. And then that summer went through chemo, and then I had radiation, and I was not missing school. I was like, I'm going back to school. I'm doing my radiation. Like, I'm driving myself in every day, had a handicap placard and all that. And because I was just, I don't know, I did not want to miss anything and wanted to just get back to life. And so that put me kind of on a different path, because I was faced with the very like real issue of, in the US, you can't get health insurance. At that point, you could not get health insurance unless you had a job, and you could only stay on your parents for a certain amount of time. So I was like, well, I can't afford to be an artist because I need stability and health insurance. And I had always been good at kind of like the marketing and tech. And I worked for Apple while I was that last year of school, and as a campus representative, because I was like super into, you know, like Apple and Macs and all that, like super nerdy, very, very nerdy. And I kind of just like put it, all the music and the writing, like I just stopped. Like, I was like, okay, I'm going to need to get and I was majoring in philosophy and psychology. Like, I don't even know, wow. Which is actually perfect for the theater industry, which I didn't know. But so I graduated, and then I went to work in high tech. So I worked for Apple for a couple of years. I was at Adobe for 13 years. I mean, this was like a real career in marketing and enterprise marketing account. I mean, I can, you know, hang with anyone and talk about that world, but I had kids, and I didn't know if I could have kids. I got married, and I got told for a long time, we don't know if you can have kids because of the chemo. And so I did, and was very lucky, and I'm very thankful to to have them and have that experience for myself. But it was 6 years ago when they were, you know, I think it was like preschool and kindergarten, and it was pre-pandemic. And I was between a job. I had left a job and I was starting another job, and I had this time to myself for the first time in, I don't even know how long. I mean, any mom knows this. Like, they're 3 and 5. They're not in the house. We had just gotten a piano. I had a guitar because I play both piano and guitar, and we had a piano because we were trying to get my older daughter. She was going to start playing. And I just sat and I just started writing. And I was like, I don't know what I'm writing. I don't know what it is. And I started writing these kind of like funny mom songs. Like, I wrote one about Marie Kondo when like all of that Marie Kondo stuff was happening. And people were like, oh, these are funny. You should do more of it. And then I think I wrote Jake's mom because there was a mom. There was a mom at the school. And I was like, what is your deal? And then I'm like, oh, I was like, what if you followed her? Like, what is her life like? Maybe she's getting divorced. And so then my brain just started like, oh, but like, who's following her? And like, is it an influencer? And what does this mean? So I literally just like went with it. And because I didn't know what I was doing, there were no expectations. I thought maybe I was writing like little sketches or a web series or whatever it was. And then it sort of told me what it was. I was like, no, this is a musical, because I kept writing. I'm like, oh, and then this could happen. And then this person could show up. And so in the first draft of it, with Millennials, there was no, the Filters characters who ended up in the show. I can talk about a little bit more, but the first name of the show was Filters. And it was like kind of about like who we, project ourselves to be. And so that a lot evolved, but I truly like really had no idea what I was doing or what I was getting myself into. And I finished a draft of it and was like, okay, well, I'll do like a local production and like that'll be fun. And I had a couple of friends come over. I have a plaque on the wall. I don't know. I can't move there. That's like the first table reading and everybody signed it.
Oh.
That was in 2019. And everyone's like, oh my God, I can't wait to see what happens with this show. Like, and I'm like, what do you mean? I wrote it. Like, it happens with the show. And I just like, again, being in LA, you write a script, it gets thrown on the pile of like burning scripts, like, and then you write an album and it gets thrown on the pile of burning albums. But you write a musical in LA, it's not the town necessarily for it. So I got a lot of encouragement really early of like, yeah, like keep working. And so I kept doing table readings, and I did one reading that the head of the ASCAP musical theater department, his name is Michael Kirker. He came and then invited me to his office to give me notes. And I remember him saying to me, and I walk in and it's like, it's like pictures of Lin-Manuel Miranda and all these people. I'm like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? I started doing this 4 months ago. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And he was like, I would not be giving you notes if I didn't think this was good. Right. And so he was like, this is how Jerry Herman wrote the end of songs. This is like what you need to have, like just giving me this like gold information, like go get the Sondheim books, go get this. And I'm like, I love a challenge. Great. And everyone's saying this is the hardest thing you can do. Don't write a musical. It's so hard. I'm like, I love hard things. I'm so the more you tell me this is the hardest thing I could do, the more I want to do it. But yeah, that's kind of the journey to it. And at that point, I didn't really know like where it was going to go or what was going to happen. And especially it was right before the pandemic. So I just was like, wow, I found this thing that I really love that combines all of my skill sets in this very strange way of writing and songwriting and marketing and business. Because as I've learned, when you have a show, you have to treat it like a small business, in like, in the producing side of things. So it was just like, it lights up all the parts of my brain. Like, how can I go back to doing anything else after this? And that's what, I mean, there's a lot that happened obviously between 2019 and today, but that was where it started. And I always like joke that it always starts with like a bunch of friends and some pizza, like in a garage. And then, you're like, what have I done? What am I doing? So
love it.
But to get your foot through the door in that meeting, like, did you like ingrain that advice that you were given? Like,
yeah,
it must have
yes.
been...
Yes and no. I mean, he's such a nice guy and so supportive of writers. And but yeah, I'm trying to think if I can't remember what it was, if it was like Tick Tick Boom or like one of those where like you just see like those little like, when Sondheim shows up to Jonathan Larson's, or like those little moments where like somebody gives you, and I've had so many of those, because no one is ever going to say, oh, this is it, we're going to Broadway, like you're the one. And I mean, maybe that does happen. I certainly haven't seen it really with my peers. And it's usually like what you see with Jonathan Larson in that movie, that you're like fighting and clawing like your way through this process, and you kind of subsist on these like little nuggets of like, hey, I think that you have something here. But yeah, he told me to make everything perfect rhyme, and I was like, I'm gonna learn about it, but probably not.
Not my work.
It's not my style.
You were saying there, people are saying, why would you write a musical? It's the hardest thing in the world. What do you think the hardest part of writing a musical is? Or from your experience, what is the hardest bit or the most frustrating part of that process? Okay, I don't want to like ruin Hadestown. Have you guys seen Hadestown? I'm hoping, or maybe you know it. Okay. I guess I can ruin it. It's like a 3,000 or how many thousands of year old story, like, is it? But when I saw Hadestown in London, it was my first time seeing it. And I was like, this is literally what it's like to write a musical at the end, where you're like wandering in the dark and you don't know. And you're like, I'm going to give up. But you could be literally this far from
like accomplishing your goal, and everyone else is like, don't give up, but you don't know, because you don't know where the end is. And I think that's the hardest part about all of this is because I think the writing is the most organic, and like the book is the hardest part. Like book writing is absolutely the hardest part. I don't care like what anybody says. I think that you can clearly you could just take a pop album and like turn it into a musical. Like it's all about the book. So yeah, I think book writing is hard, but I also think that just the uncertainty and like you don't really know what's going to happen next, and you have to plan as though everything you do is the last time you do it, but then also plan as though you've got this like really great plan, right? Of, which I do. I totally have a really great plan, but you don't know what could happen. The world shut down with a pandemic, and like you have to just build so that even if this doesn't work right now, is it Gutenberg and it comes back 15 years later? Is it Merrily that flops and then is like the biggest thing on Broadway? So you're kind of like building this thing that is going to exist and scale and be replicated, and so many people are going to play these characters, and hopefully that's the hope. So many people are going to play it. And that's why I think it's so different from any other kind of art, where like you make a movie, you make it once, unless there's a reboot, and people come in and out of your team just because they're not available or like this. And so yeah, it is a wild, it's a wild thing. And but yeah, to answer your question, I think just the not knowing and not being in like a lot of control over those pieces of it, that there are a lot of people who are, whether they're artistic directors, whether they are theater owners, whether they are producers, who, again, nobody is going to like look at you and be like, I'm making this happen. And if they do that, they literally have to own their own theater and like be able to finance the whole thing, because you just need a giant army of people to be able to get a show off the ground.
And in your opinion, is there a desirable list of ingredients to make a hit musical number or like a musical, or is it just anything can go?
It's such an interesting question. Are you saying in terms of the like a song itself, or just the whole show?
Go with the whole show, like to start with, and then we can maybe like dissect into like a real hit musical number. As a musical, is there a desired list of ingredients you need, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so, but I also think that changes over time, right? Like you look at the mega musical, right? And how expensive those are to produce right now. So I think that there's sort of like the societal stuff that's going on at the same time too, just like whether that's economics and is it too expensive to produce? And I, as a writer, don't like to let those factors influence me too much, but I am, because I'm kind of business minded, I am like, I don't want to write things that can't get made, And so like, we're not necessarily going to have like an elephant that flies across the stage, or, like, I don't know, like whatever. Like, no, it must be there for my vision. It just like, those are the things that make things like not necessarily producible. So, but yeah, so I think that's a moving target a little bit, but I do think at its core, like great writing, I would say great story, but like Six isn't really a story. Like I think it's great writing, but it's not really a book musical. Like ultimately it's kind of its own genre of thing, which I love Six. Like that's not me trashing it. So I don't think that it even needs to be like the most incredible book of all time. But I think that like heart and authenticity and certainly writing things that are like catchy is like helpful. But yeah, I mean those are the things that I respond to, but other people like love like super operatic other, so
taste. No, I suppose it's all about taste and what you like and what you enjoy. So good musical theater number.
Yeah, good.
What does it need to have?
Well, it depends what it's doing in the moment of the show, right? So are we learning about a character? Are we going through like some emotional transformation? So I think that that's a big, it depends, but I do think that it needs to have a little bit of a beginning, middle, and an end. And that, and going back to what I was saying before about like when I used to write songs in high school, I was writing these like very generic pop songs. Like I didn't, and as soon as I started writing for characters, that's when it like blew up for me. I was like, oh, okay, this all makes sense now. Like I'm writing as a character. This is moving the story forward. And so I do think that a good song should move the story forward in some way and tell you some new information about the character and either their inner life or what's happening. But yeah, I love a catchy song. Like one of my favorite shows is Chicago. Like I literally will see Chicago anytime I go to New York. If I don't, but I would. Because I walk out with every song in my head. Like that is to me, but that's a me thing. But it's also a testament to like how long and how successful that show has been. Same as like Wicked, so I think you can look a little bit at like what has worked and continues to work.
Yeah.
In terms of what makes a hit. So I think that kind of pop music that's original, that, is catchy and all of that is a good thing.
Yeah. Do you have any inspirational composers yourself? Are there any composers out there in the musical theatre world that you're like, yeah, they're class?
It's interesting. I mean, I feel like my answer now is different than it would have been, just because I feel like if you think of musical theater composers, I'm like, oh, I love like Lin-Manuel Miranda. Like what a champ, like everything that he does is incredible. Stephen Schwartz, like there are so many that have broken the mold, and like, Stephen Schwartz is much more of like a pop folk sensibility. But there's also, when you think of like the greatest composers, not a lot of women like in that circle. So, I definitely like, I thought the music for Stuffs and Shine a Top, like it was fantastic. Like I am sad that it's closing. I loved that show. I thought it was incredible writing. And she's definitely like an inspiration. And I've different, I guess, like role models in composing for different reasons. But like I also really love Be More Chill. It's like one of my favorite. I love Be More Chill. I feel like it's so weird to be in this industry now, because then you're like a fan girl for like people that you meet, because in one of the readings, his Joe Iconis' incredibly talented wife, Lauren Marcus, played Jake's mom in a reading that we did. And so he came to the reading. And so it was like, I was like, oh my God, it's a lot of pressure. And then he came to the show at 54 Below, and he was so kind and complimentary. It was like, great work. And I was like, this is another moment that like, I'm going to run with this. But so you do end up meeting some of the people that you look up to like in that way, which is super cool.
How exciting. Let's get back to Millennials Are Killing Musicals then. So you had said like the early stages, it was Filters. It was called Filters.
That was the first draft, was called Filters. Yeah.
So where did the name change come from, and how did that come about? It's such a catchy title, like amazing job at the title. It's brilliant.
Thank you. I am trying to remember. I mean, everything kind of, it was like a process of like excavating what I was trying to like write and say. I always describe the writing process of like trying to actually like tease out what my brain like just dumped like onto the page. So I think it was probably, I don't know. I honestly would have to go back and look. It was maybe a year into it, because they started as followers. So they weren't the Filters, they were followers, and they were Katrina, the influencer character's followers. And I remember I was on like an exercise bike or something, and I was like, like she needs to have these characters that like sort of visually represent like her social impact and influence. And then I think it was after the first Zoom reading we did in 2020 that I was like, I think that they need to be a little bit more of like an actual presence. So like more like Fates as opposed to Greek chorus, but like sort of. And yeah, so it just kind of evolved like naturally over time. But the idea of filtering was always there. It was just like, it took me a couple of drafts to actually like get there and make them not just like backup singers or like kind of a device, but more like, we're gonna like mess with these people and we're gonna like, we're gonna change the outcome of the story. And yeah, I think them as like they kind of closest to what they are now was in 2022 and that reading that we did in New York. And yeah, and the 54 Below show. Like, I feel like that's when they started having lines. They started kind of being involved. And again, they've just continued to evolve over the past 2 years since then.
And remind your listeners again, how long has this process been?
It's been 6 years. So yeah, I know.
To this point, do you have a favorite moment in the process? Was there a particular time or thing that happened or something that clicked that you went, oh my God, this is amazing?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many of those. Like I don't know that I could pick one moment because every revelation has been so cool. And there's been so many moments where I'm like, nothing could top this. Like I remember because so much of the development happened during the pandemic over Zoom, which I didn't know any different. I hadn't done it in person. So I was kind of willing to like, no, I'm not stopping. Like, so we did 2 equity readings with, like New York actors in 2020, 2021. There was like the New York Theater Barn New Work series that I was able to be a part of. And Diana Huey, who's been like since 2020 was involved in the show. She's an actress and she's Katrina on the cast recording and has become a good friend since then. Like, I mean, like I was able to, because of the pandemic in a lot of ways, work with these incredibly talented folks and showcase it and start building like a digital footprint for it. And, that this exists and this is getting like workshopped and worked on. So, I mean, like every one of those moments, like seeing it, like when, on New York Theater Barn and 2021, being able to do it in person for the first time in LA and doing our show at Vitello's and like the feeling of just like seeing it up on stage in front of audience and having them laugh, developing comedies in front of Zoom is like the worst.
Yeah.
You just like lob a joke out there and there's nothing, like no reaction. And like that, so much of this show lives in the laughter, and the filters even like started interacting with the audience. And that was like kind of a new thing that I learned towards the end of the off-Broadway developmental run. And so I've really like leaned into that a little bit more in this next rewrite. But I mean, hearing Crystal and Lloyd saying Who I Am, like, come on, like write a song and then have an unbelievable superstar like her put her spin on it is just like, what? Like how does this happen? I mean, those kinds of moments are just, there are too many. And then on the producing side, I feel like it's the same thing. Like as a writer, there are those moments, but then as a producer is almost equally as exciting because it's like getting the first co-producers joining the team, like people believing in it and like putting their own money into the show. Like it is just such a gratifying process to like have this army of people that believe in this thing so much that they have been just like literally putting their name on it, joining the team. So yeah, I know it's such a like huge response to the question, but I also know now that there are going to be so many more like of those moments that I just don't even know what to expect. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this question might be a very unfair one to ask, Nico.
Okay.
Because obviously all of the songs are your babies, right? Yeah. Do you have a favorite one, or do you have one that just has a lasting memory for you? Out of like, honest to God, from start to finish, they're absolutely brilliant. Like all of the songs. But I'm just quite interested. Is there something in there that you were like, I will never forget when that number clicked, or do you have a favorite baby?
So I guess a complicated answer to that too. Like, so for me, there were moments that things clicked with adulting, for example, when we did LA in 2021, and Ted Arthur, who is now like Mr. Broadway, working on Back to the Future and all these things. He was the music director. He's now the music supervisor, but he came out and it just wasn't working. And then I was like, what if we like double timed it and just like made it more upbeat? And it was like this moment where like, yeah, like that was super, like that was like a clicking moment. And then I performed it in front of the cast and everyone was like, woo. It was just,
love it.
You know, I was like, this is what we're doing with it now. So that was pretty fun. I hate performing, but like I'll do it if I have to. But then writing wise, I think Who I Am was that song. I wish I could tell you what the writing process was, but I knew I needed that song moment. And I sat down at the piano and I wrote it. And then I like literally almost in one shot, like it was crazy, like a download. And then I stepped back from the piano and I was like, what? And then I sent it to a couple of people and they were like, oh, that, I mean, I'm happy to, if you guys want to hear it, like I'll send it to you. I have the voice note from when I did. Yeah. And but it really hasn't changed that much from then. So there are definitely songs that have changed a lot. Like On a Plane, it was totally different. But that song, I was like, it just came out. Like it was just, and so it's special to me in that way, but I also think it's probably the most like sort of like emotionally vulnerable and like, but yeah, I wish I could say, oh yeah, I plotted it out and then this and then that. Like, it just, yeah. So,
but that is sensational. That was go, like that song of all of the songs, like it's the one that when I listen to a cast recording, I'll just listen right from the beginning to the end, and then I'll always go back to a song. And it was that song that I went back to. I was like, I have to listen to that one again.
Yeah.
You just sat down and wrote that from start to finish.
Yeah.
You are absolute. Your talent is insane.
That I think it's. I really like Santa Please Don't Go, because as my kids have got older now, it is something that I definitely remember like threatening them with. So I love that story from like a memory point of view, but I think that that song and is just, I think that's probably why you were able to write it in one go, because you are a mom and it's so the truth in it is just wonderful, and it really resonated with me as somebody who they have like 20 hats on their head. So I love it. But my favorite song that I constantly hum is, and I feel like we need a petition to make this famous on TikTok, is I'm famous on the internet. Like,
oh yeah, basic, yeah.
I sing that line all the time. I am not famous on the internet, but I'm like, why is this not a TikTok like song? Why are people not using this more?
Oh my God. Well, maybe when we get to Broadway, right? Like that'll be, you don't want the lightning in the bottle to hit before, or you capture the lightning in the bottle before then. But it's funny that you said that. And thank you guys so much, by the way. It's funny that you said that about Santa Don't Go. I kind of feel like it might be my favorite song on the album, because I just love everyone in it together. And I love just the way it sounds. Like that one is just a great sounding track. So like, I don't know, I probably would be if I was going to like listen to one over and over, it would be that one.
Love it.
And then how did the cast recording come about, and how did that feel going, oh my God, we're getting a cast recording, this is great?
I mean, it's so funny because I feel like there's nothing that sort of it was all planned. It was really because I'm still on the producing team and was like, again, I'm trying to build these things that it's like, if this is it, if we're never doing it again, I want to have something that is, commemorates that we did this. And so when we were building the budget and the plan and all of that, it was something that I really insisted on. Like, this is something that we need. And like, we need to add this to the budget in order to do it. And it's honestly a great thing for the actors at the end of the day, because these off-Broadway things, especially at nonprofits that are like 2-week runs, it doesn't pay a lot of money, right? Like, and it sucks and it needs to be better. And I now have had like, now that I've lived through it, I'm like, oh, this is, it can be done better than this. But it is a great way because that you get paid the SAG equity like standards. And so they get like a nice kind of bump in pay at the end for doing it. So I think I would love to see it be a thing that gets added on to a lot more of these kinds of productions. But yeah, it was definitely the plan though. And I think everyone should, I won't play coy like, oh yeah, we didn't know, but no, it was.
Well, as you say, it's so lovely to have for everybody involved. You've mentioned a couple of times your different roles, producer, writer. Yeah. Is that difficult in a project, being all of those things? Do they conflict with each other, or are you very good, or is it easy to compartmentalize them all?
So it depends on the day, but I would say that if I wasn't a producer also, I don't know what I would have been doing most of this past year. You know what I mean? Like and I have been writing too, and I'm working on, we did a table read back in March with, the new draft, and I'm working on another draft right now, but I'm kind of the kind of writer also. And I think I said this before of like, I don't want to write things that people are not going to see. And it just is, it's so much work and so much effort to write a musical. And the barrier is so high that I want to know what's happening next and like what the plan is. So I have a very hard time motivating myself to sit and do a rewrite if I don't know why I'm doing it. Because the truth of the matter is, if, I don't know, so let's say some cruise company was like, we're going to put this on every cruise ship, then that's going to be a different rewrite than, Broadway, right? So I, right or wrong, that is just kind of like how I operate. And yeah, so, but I do think that I am able to separate the hats and like have my producer hat on and pitch or, talk the business of it, and then take that hat off and get into the room. What I realized after this last round was that I needed more people like on the producing side on my team to handle stuff while I'm in a creative process, or sometimes just to, if I'm in a room and I need to just be the writer on a call and have somebody else thinking about the business. So I've been working for a year and a half also since then. Producer Cody Lassen, he's a incredible Broadway producer. He had been unofficially mentoring me for about 2 years before, after the off-Broadway run, I went to him and was like, listen, I'm at the point right now where I need support. The team is growing. Would this be a good time for you? Like, if you have the capacity to come on as an executive producer and kind of help guide the process, the next steps, all of these conversations as the team grows, because ultimately you end up with, these days for Broadway, like 40 or 50 co-producers. It's a big team, right? And you need someone feeding people information, and there's only one of me and I'm doing everything. I'm doing book, lyrics, music. So, and I know where I need help. It's like, okay, I need help on the music side. I need help with this. I need help with that. And that was where I was like, I need help right now for this, going forward. And so that he was like, he had been a friend of the project and a fan of the project for a while. So he was like, absolutely, this is the time. And so then we started working together, and it's been great. And that's really helped just kind of narrow the focus of like, what are the next steps and what are we doing? But it's so nice to sometimes be like, hey, Cody, I think it's best if you take that call, or I think it's better if you talk on this call, because I just need to be there as the writer. And I know that the team's going to keep growing too. I mean, you look at these lead producing teams, it's usually teams of 2-3 more people once you get kind of there, because you do need people with different sets of expertises on the team at that point.
So, producer Nico, what is next for Millennials? Is there any plans in the pipeline? What's happening currently?
So what's next for the show? Obviously more rewrites. And then I can't say too much at this point, but there will be a workshop next spring, and there will be, it's looking like a world premiere production in the fall. So
that's so exciting.
I cannot.
We have to go wherever it is in the world.
You're flying out wherever it is. I can't say where, I can't say when, but because things are not signed yet, but it's looking really, really promising and exciting with some really great partners. So next year is going to be wild. I'm super excited for it.
That's amazing.
We're just delighted that there is a next step, because it is so magical that like anybody we listen to, like, have got any new musicals to listen to, we constantly keep saying millennials.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So amazing that more people are going to be able to be exposed to your wonderful work.
And it was a real hit when we talked about you and your musical on the podcast. It really,
amazing,
really got our listeners going as well. So that's fantastic. I mean, our podcast is all about what have musicals taught us. So I suppose to round off our fantastic conversation and chat with you today, Nico, what have musicals taught you?
Oh, I mean, so many things. Writing musicals, or taking in musicals, or just like or both.
Everything.
All of it, Nico. All of it.
I mean, definitely in terms of the writing, like trusting my instincts, whether it's on the creative side or the producing side, trusting the process. I think, because I've done it enough times that I'm like, I'm done. This is the best it could be. And then it gets even better, and it goes even further. And so, but then you see that kind of starting to get like less and less and less the further you go along. So definitely just trusting the process, trusting sort of, the universe to work things out when you are doing good work, making the right connections and all of that. And patience. And like, I've learned a lot of patience, that it is a long, long process. And it is not Hollywood. There's no overnight successes. You really have to be out there growing your brand, and whether it's for you as a writer or for your shows, and so I think those are the big things. And I get also just that musical theater is, it's magical and it's worth it. Like, again, when all the things come together in the right way, it's truly, there is nothing like it. And imagine that feeling, and it's like your own thing that you wrote, and you're like, it is like just proud parent time, But
you deserve all the successes in the world. You've clearly worked extremely hard, and your product already was good. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like with these rewrites and the work you continue to pump into it. So all the best for next year.
Yeah.
Certainly Musical Lyrical Lingo are very excited for
and we'll
you.
be supporting you every step of the way.
We'll be following the process.
Thank you. Well, I'll keep you updated on everything that's going to happen. So you'll know, and we can once we can actually start talking about it. But I appreciate so much the support and the kind words. I mean, again, these are the moments that for me, it's like, I don't know that people 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 miles away are finding something in the work that I'm doing. I'm just sitting here in my office in LA. So it's like really, and as a side note, my other show, Winner, is being workshopped right now by both students at NYCDA and students at Florida State University, like in the same time frame. So it's just, you can kind of, I guess that's another thing that I've learned, is like, you don't know how your work impacts other people or the scope of that. And again, to kind of just keep doing good work and keep putting it out there, and it'll all pay off, or I mean, it has. This is, again, same mindset of, if this is as far as anything goes, it's incredible to have even one person connect to the material. So thank you.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you so much for your time this morning for you.
Yeah.
Hopefully can you have an off day, or are you going to be going right back on board and doing a wee bit more work on it today?
I mean, it's always the schedule of the parent, artist, producer is you just don't know what is going to happen. at any moment. So,
well, good luck with everything. And again, thank you so much for taking time to speak to us. We really appreciate it.
And to any of the listeners out there that haven't listened to Millennials Are Killing musicals, go listen to it now. Where can our followers follow you, Nico, sorry?
You can follow me at Stuff Nico Likes. You can follow on both Instagram and TikTok, and you can follow the show at MAKM Musical on TikTok and at Millennials Are Killing Musicals on Instagram. But yeah, just follow, stay tuned, and we'll be posting stuff as stuff comes out about what's happening.
That is
Can't
great.
wait. We'll be watching very closely.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Nico.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.